Hello. Title of today's training presentation is guarding. This is today's agenda. We will go over definitions and rules. We're going to do a deep dive into guarding. We're going to talk about verticality, referee in the defense, and then we'll bring a summary or closing to this presentation. Let's talk about definitions and rules. If you indulge me with your patience, I promise it'll be worth it. We're going to spend a great deal of time on this particular slide. So just what is guarding? Guarding is the act of legally placing the body in the path of an offensive opponent. Every player is entitled to a spot on the playing court, provided such player gets there first without legally contacting an opponent. A player who extends an arm, shoulder, hip, or leg into the path of the opponent is not considered to have a legal position if contact occurs. Let me reread this sentence for you here. Every player is entitled to a spot on the playing court, provided such player gets there first without legally contacting an opponent. Know what words are not in Article 1? Set, still, stationary. Now, probably in guarding, the most important three words that you ought to know if you're a coach, if you're a player, and damn, if you're an official, you need to know these three words if you don't know any other three words of terminology in the rule book. Legal guarding position. To obtain an initial legal guarding position, the guard shall have both feet touching the playing court, and the front of the guard's torso shall be facing the opponent. What three words are not in there? Set, still, stationary. Watch this. Let's go to Article 3. After initial legal guard position is obtained, here are all the things the guard can do. The guard may have one or both feet on the playing court or be airborne, provided the guard has inbound status. The guard is not required to continue to face the opponent. The guard may move laterally or obliquely to maintain position, provided it is not towards the opponent when contact occurs. A guard can also move backwards, because if you're guarding someone and you get to the spot first and they start to drive and you move backwards, 99 out of 100 times you're probably going to beat them to the spot. The guard may raise hands or jump within the guard's own vertical plane. We're going to discuss that more when we talk about verticality. The guard may even turn or duck to absorb the shock of imminent contact. Here's the bottom line. Once a guard attains legal guarding position, then they're allowed to maintain it. They are allowed to maintain it by moving, essentially moving their feet. That's kind of the opposite of the three words being set, still, or stationary, which again, you're not going to find in this rule. Now, there are three types of opponents that you can guard in basketball. You can guard an opponent with the ball. You can guard a stationary opponent without the ball. You can guard a moving opponent without the ball. If you are guarding either an opponent with the ball or a stationary opponent without the ball, time and distance are not required to obtain legal guarding position. If they're airborne, you must have obtained legal guard position before your opponent leaves the floor. If you're guarding a moving opponent without the ball, time and distance are required to obtain legal guard position. The guard should give the opponent time and distance to avoid contact. This distance need not be more than 2 strides. And again, if the opponent is airborne, you must have obtained legal guard position before the opponent leaves the floor. If you referee NCAA men, there's a little caveat to that rule that we won't discuss in this presentation. We're basically just discussing the basics. But the NCAA men have a couple of caveats to this rule with regards to path, and they gather right before a shooter or a ball handler dribbler is to go airborne. But in principle, everything else about the rule is the same on every level. This most fundamental rule in basketball can be found in National Federation High School Rule 4-23, where this particular image is coming from. NCAA Men Rule 4.17, NCAA Women 10.4. This fundamental rule sets the stage for most of some of the other rules that we will look at throughout the sport of basketball. Verticality. Verticality takes its cue from guarding, more specifically, legal guarding position. Verticality applies to a legal position, so that means before you can achieve verticality, you must first achieve a legal position. Once you achieve a legal guarding position, again, you can move to maintain legal guard position. This movement includes being able to rise and jump vertically and occupy the space within your own vertical plane. Sometimes you may hear officials talk about this concept of verticality, rising and jumping in your own plane, making reference to it as going from A to A. A player can use his hands and arms to defend on the floor or in the air within his own vertical plane. We're going to learn later via the same rule coming from the NCAA rulebook that the principle of verticality applies to both offensive and defensive players. Here's a summary of guarding, what we've learned so far. Guarding will eventually lead to blocks and charges. Again, you know what words are not in the guarding rule? The words in green above this short summary. Set, still, stationary. When we get to blocks and charges, guess what you're not going to see in those rules? Set, still, stationary. To play defense, ladies and gentlemen, you must have the capacity to move, which is the opposite of being set, being still, being stationary. Obtaining legal guard position. We've learned there are three types of opponents that you can guard. In most cases, there is no minimum time or distance required to obtain legal guard position. It takes a moment. It takes a fraction of a second. You can obtain it with an offensive player inches away or several feet away. We keep harping that you literally can move to obtain legal guard position. You can go laterally, obliquely, retreat, jump, turn around, duck. And we now know the three categories of guarding: an opponent with the ball, stationary opponent without the ball, and a moving opponent. Now we're going to get a little bit more in depth into guarding. Stop me if you've seen this slide before. Do you feel the need to go back through it, to reinvent the wheel? I didn't think so. Let's keep going. Here's some flavors of guarding. Basketball teams have two options of defense to play against their opponents: man-to-man defenses, as we see in the images by North Carolina against Syracuse, or zone defenses, as we see Syracuse playing against North Carolina. We will use this particular game that occurred in 2022 in the rest of this presentation. When an offense begins running its half-court sets, let's observe that oftentimes the majority of defenders will have obtained legal guard position. In man-to-man defenses, how long does it take to obtain legal guard position? An instant. The moment we turn around and face the opponent with 2 feet on the floor inbounds, we have attained legal guard position. Remember, after attaining legal guard position, we can move laterally, obliquely, or retreat to maintain legal guard position. This is the 2-3 zone. The 2-3 zone, all defenders typically start out in legal guarding position, as they are either guarding the BHD, looking toward the BHD as though they're guarding the BHD, whilst at the same time guarding the area. You typically have 2 defenders beyond the 3-point arc or near the 3-point arc, while another 3 defenders are usually inside the 3-point arc. Here you see you have 2 primary defenders guarding the BHD. Note they are both legal guarding defenders. Here you see 1 defender guarding the BHD. He is also in legal guarding position, while the other 4 defenders who are looking at the BHD are not only guarding the BHD, but they are also guarding the area. These are staples of a zone defense, guarding the BHD while simultaneously guarding the area as well. In most cases, again, there is no minimal time or distance requirement to attain legal guard position. It takes a moment, a fraction of a second. You can obtain legal guard position with an offensive opponent inches away or several feet away. You can move to maintain legal guard position. In man-to-man defenses, once our defenders turn around to face their matchup opponent, they potentially have obtained legal guard position. Here are some points to consider for when teams are playing zone defenses. Chapter 3, Verticality. We will do a simplistic yet analytical deep dive on verticality. Once legal guarding position is obtained, players can now defend vertically. A player can defend by rising or by jumping vertically in his own plane. You may hear your officials speaking of going from A to A. A, it represents each player's legal space on the playing court inbounds from the playing court all the way infinitely up to the ceiling. A player can use his hands and arms to defend on the floor or in the air within his own vertical plane. And please note that the principles of verticality apply to both offensive and defensive players. Articles 2 through 7 in this rule give us a great description of what offensive and defensive players can and cannot do with respect to each player's vertical plane. This is the verticality rule taken from the NCAA rulebook. One of the most important things to note in this rule is the very first statement given by Article 1, which reads, verticality applies to a legal position and also to both the offensive and defensive players. So first, to achieve verticality, you must have a legal position, or if you are a member of the defense, a legal guarding position. A through K, similar to what we saw on the last slide with the components given by the National Federation High School Rulebook, define the things that offensive players and defensive players can and cannot do with respect to verticality. But in short, all players are entitled to their legal position and space such that they cannot be displaced from their legal position and space, whether they are on the ground or they are airborne. The remainder of this chapter will have us looking at plays. We're seeing the principle of verticality at work and seeing where it may have been violated.
I would agree, but I'll tell you this, Dan. I had the pleasure of meeting Julie Boeheim today, and I was a little more excited to meet her than even Jim Boeheim. She is here and sitting right behind the bench, the wife of the head coach. And the Orange just keep adding on. Jimmy Boeheim.
Once legal guard position is obtained, players can now defend vertically. A player can defend by jumping vertically in his own plane. You may hear officials speak of going from A to A. In this play, you see white, number 45, obtain legal guard position and attempt to contest the floater by jumping legally in his own plane. Verticality at work for a defender. Let's look at the next play.
Swider trying for another three, and the Orange can't miss right now.
In this play, you see white, number 2, obtain legal guard position and attempt to contest the three-point shot by jumping legally in his own plane. Again, verticality at work for a defender. Let's take a look at another play.
Boeheim had a conversation with both him and Jimmy Boeheim after the Duke game, told them to be confident. They're not going to see a front court like the one that Duke has. He wants them to play with confidence, and Cole Swider has done.
We earlier talked about verticality being a legal position and having the ability to rise and jerk vertically in your own plane, going from A to A, jumping from your own spot or space on the floor and returning back to their original space. In this play, you see red 35 attempt to contest the three-point shot by jumping to alter the shot. He starts to jump from his own plane, but he lands into a new plane that is not his original vertical plane. Sometimes you will hear officials speak of that as going from A to B. However, red 35 does not contact or displace the shooter. Thus, there is nothing to call on this play. Let's look at another play.
Have good self-awareness. Buddy Boeheim, and the Orange still haven't missed.
In this play, you see white, number 1, obtain legal guard position and attempt to contest the three-point shot by jumping legally in his own plane. Again, verticality at work for a defender. Let's take a look at another play.
Three-pointers, and Syracuse must have taken some lessons from that.
Hey, Armando Bacot, great move, couldn't finish it. Comes up with the offensive rebound and is headed to the line.
In this play, you see the principle of verticality hard at work. We have white 5 shooting the layup while airborne and landed in his own plane. Red 5 defending the layup attempt by white 5. Red 5 jumps vertically in his own plane and returns to the floor. We have multiple players attempting to rebound the basketball. Eventually, white 5 obtains the offensive rebound and attempts a putback. Red 21 violates verticality as he illegally contacts white 5, which is correctly called as a foul. Let's look at one final play regarding verticality.
Hubert Davis feels he's got a variety of options to make plays from the free throw line, from the ACC logo. Caleb Love with his second step back three of the night, and this one won't go.
And that's one of the things Hubert Davis.
Red 35 starts in a legal position. He jumps vertically in his plane, but lands in another plane. He goes from A to B. Thus, this is not verticality by definition, because verticality involves legal positions. But 35 does not contact or displace the shooter that he is contesting. Thus, there is nothing to call on this play. Red 21 obtains the defensive rebound He does so by jumping legally in his own vertical plane, obtains the rebound, and lands back on the floor in his own vertical plane. Summarize verticality. It's legal, never illegal. It applies to a legal position. Once legal guarding position is obtained, defenders may rise or jump vertically within their own plane. That is by rule. Offense and defense. Verticality applies to a legal position and also to both the offensive and defensive players. For offense, we're talking about rebounders and shooters. For defense, we're talking about rebounders and defenders. All these players are allowed to rise or jump and return to the ground in their own vertical plane without being illegally contacted and or displaced from their position. Chapter 4. Referee the defense. Perhaps the most important concepts for basketball officials. Refereeing the defense. This concept involves basketball officials taking an angle or position such that they can see the airspace between opposing players. By obtaining an optimal position, basketball officials can see both opposing players in their line of sight and effectively officiate the legality of their actions and movements. In short, we want to make adjustments or move to where we get angles where we can see between offense and the defense and any potential airspace between opposing players. Same slide, just flipping the triangle, so to speak. But again, you can see we want our referee in most cases between the offense and defensive players where our official is allowed to see both players and the basketball if it's an on-ball matchup, but even if it's an off-ball matchup in his or her line of sight. When a trail official is officiating an on-ball matchup in the backcourt, said trail official should take a position just slightly behind the ball handler dribbler while still being able to see the airspace between opposing players. So for our trail officials, whether it's a two-person crew or a three-person crew, when we have an on-ball matchup going from backcourt to front court without pressure defense, we want to do our best to ensure that that on-ball matchup crosses the division line before we do.
Week, and I honestly believe he is the ACC Player of the Year.
Putting up monster numbers for the Tar Heels. We are underway here at the Dean Dome. The Orange come in 15-14 on the season, 9-9 in league play, and that didn't take long. Cole Swider knocks down a three.
And Cole Swider already with more points in this game than he had against Duke last time out.
The Syracuse team, of course, that plays the 2-3 zone, they like to shoot the three themselves. Leaky Black, one of the senior night honorees, although let's get back to that story a little bit later. But he was out there getting honored before the game. As we take a look at tonight's starting lineups, brought to you by Degree, the Boeheim brothers, Joe Girard, Cole Swider, and Frank Anselm. In for the injured Jesse Edwards, out for the season with a broken wrist. And for Carolina, this being senior night, Ryan McAdoo, the son of the Hall of Famer Bob McAdoo.
The next 4 slides will have us looking at 4 plays. We're going to first observe our outside officials, trail and center. Do they take optimal positions where they can referee the defense? We're also going to observe our lead official in each of these plays. How does our lead official gain optimal positions where he can referee the defense? Let's look at our second play.
Fans coming back to life here in Chapel Hill. You know, Davis quietly 13 a game at a 40% three-point shooter. Ball deflected into the backcourt. Again, good defense by Leaky Black, a good offensive player in Buddy Boeheim.
Did you have an opportunity to observe our trail and center officials, our outside officials, on the on-ball matchups? Did they take optimal positions where they can referee the defense? What do our outside officials do to gain optimal positions? And does our lead official assist them in any way? Let's look at the next play.
Playing each other in Brooklyn. That's always a good matchup.
It's always a great matchup between those two teams, as we saw a couple weeks ago, and a beautiful find from Leaky Black to break.
Did you observe our outside officials trail and center on the on-ball matchups? Did they take optimal positions where they could referee the defense? What did they do to gain such optimal positions? And did our lead official assist them in any way? Let's take a look at one more play.
The resurgence for Miami this year, the 6th year, a lot of that has to do with Cameron McGusty and Dane Goodwin, the most consistent player for Notre Dame this season, who may end up finishing second in the ACC.
You'll get some pushback from some people.
I'm used to it.
You don't mind that, yeah.
You know how to feel about that.
Manic, no. Great tip there by Bacon with a left.
Syracuse is playing a zone defense against North Carolina in this play. What did our outside officials, this being our trail and center, do on the on-ball matchups? Did they take optimal positions where they could referee the defense? What did they do to gain optimal positions? And does our lead official assist them in any way? Let's answer those questions that we had in the plays that we just viewed for refereeing the defense. Our crew in this game did a very good job of refereeing the defense. How did they achieve this? They achieved this through position adjustments. We saw in several of the plays where our two outside officials, are trail and center, took a few steps, sometimes west, sometimes east, or left or right, which gave them the best angle and position on matchup between opposing players. This movement is called a position adjustment. Our outside officials saw that if players move to the point where they no longer can see the airspace between the players, especially with on-ball matchups or screening action, our officials just took a couple of steps left, a couple of steps right to get a better angle on the play. They made position adjustments. Initial is everything. So in the front court, our officials observed getting to their correct initial positions and working from there via position adjustments. And because of that, their call percentage is going to go way up. The initial position for trail officials in a 2 or 3 person crew is the 28-foot mark. In a 3-person crew, the initial position for our center official is the free throw line extended. And in a 2 or 3 person crew, the initial position for our lead is the post-up position on the end line. So if you have the 3-foot mark on the end line marked on your court, you're going to be just outside of that line. Getting to these correct positions also allows us to make fewer movements to officiate plays. We can work smarter as opposed to harder. Rotations are everything. You may have been watching the on-ball action, and rightfully so, because that's what most fans watch. But something real subtle happened in a couple of these plays. Our lead simply made a rotation when it was necessary. And because that rotation was the correct rotation, it aided our crew greatly in positioning. We must know when to rotate. We have a series on rotations, so we definitely are not going to discuss rotations here. But those good rotations, those timely and on-time rotations, allow our crew great positioning, thus being able to effectively referee the defense. In closing, so we talked about guarding and all its infinite wisdom. Remember, the words set, still, stationary are not anywhere in the rule book with regards to guarding. Guarding is very simple at its essence. You must obtain legal guarding position, and once you obtain it, you can maintain it. It takes a fraction of a second or a moment to obtain legal guarding position. Simply 2 feet on the playing court with your torso facing your opponent. Once you've done that, you've obtained it. To maintain it, you can move almost anywhere, laterally, obliquely, left or right. You can retreat. You can jump within your vertical plane. You can turn around. You can duck. Remember, we have 3 categories of guarding. We have opponents with the ball, stationary opponents without the ball, moving opponents. And moving opponents are the only category where time and distance are required to obtain legal guard position, with that distance being no more than 2 normal strides. We learned about the flavors of guarding, man-to-man defenses and zone defenses. Again, obtaining legal guard position doesn't change as far as obtaining it and maintaining it. Understand that in both defenses, almost all defenders initially will have attained legal guard position. That's why it's important for officials, especially, to referee the defense, because we have more instances where legal guard position has been obtained than one might think. When we are able to understand when a defender has attained legal guard position and have legally maintained it, again, our call percentages as officials go way up. We spend a great deal of time understanding verticality. Verticality is a legal position. It is never illegal. It applies to both offense and defensive players, rebounders, shooters, defenders. The principle pretty much being that rebounders, shooters, and defenders are allowed to rise or jump vertically from A to A. That is, they have the capacity to be able to rise or jump from the ground infinitely up to the ceiling and return to their original position and or space without being illegally contacted or displaced. Officials work best when they get to their initial positions, which is the 28-foot mark for trail, free throw line extended for center, and the postal position on the end line for lead. Once they get to that initial position, then they can make position adjustments as needed in order to be able to effectively referee the defense, and being in the right position initially and making small position adjustments allows us to work smarter, not harder. A great aid in being able to referee the defense and make accurate rulings and decisions are good, timely, and purposeful rotations by our lead official. Thank you for spending part of your day with us. We hope you have gained some valuable insight and knowledge about guarding. Now, after hearing this presentation, do you believe that it is the most fundamental rule in all of basketball? That being guarding. Have a great day, a great week, a great month, a great year, a great season. Guarding Is it the most important rule in basketball? What is your answer?